last session, but I think a really interesting one as we go through this. We have a set of panelists, set of all enterprise companies, as I mentioned earlier, all in different stages on their adoption of Hadoop. And this is really just to have a discussion as we walk through and say, how did you get started? What was your journey like? What are the things you've learned? What are the lessons learned along the way? And so with that, I want to bring them out, and I really appreciate all of our panelists spending the time on this and to be able to go participate in this session and to share their insights, their knowledge, and their expertise with everyone here in the room. So with that, let me call everyone out. Okay? Come on out to the front. So, David Gleason, Bank of New York. David, welcome. Daljit Rihal from British Gas Centrica. Daljit. Ratnakar Lavu from Coles. Thank you. Chris Dingle from Rogers. Thank you. Anu from Target. And John from TrueCar. So thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And I guess that's my seat over here. Let me grab a water. So really, just as an informal discussion for everybody as we go through this in terms of what everyone's doing. And as we go through this, if you don't mind, if you just give your name for everyone quick, and I think I'm supposed to click one here. There you go. And role in the company as we talk through this, and just we'll get started. So first, David, why don't I start with you on the end there? Why don't you just describe quickly your role and name and everything, but for everybody, everyone get that? If you could give a view of when did you get started on your journey to Hadoop, and how did you get started? If you can just give some perspective on that.
Great. No, I'd be happy to. So I'm David Gleason, Head of Data Strategy and Chief Data Officer for BNY Mellon. And, we really got started about the middle of last year on our Hadoop journey. And it was interesting because we initially started looking at Hadoop as a vehicle for supporting some data science and decision science use cases that we were working on. We have massive amounts of data about trades going on in the US, and we're really looking at how can we start doing machine learning and predictive analytics. And as we brought it in, we started to realize that there was so much more we could be doing, and that it really was more than just big data and decision science. It was a platform for really changing the way we manage data around the organization. So we're early in our journey, but we've got some huge plans right now.
Great. Okay. So I'll shake this up so we don't go in order. Anu, how about you? Let's start with you again. Where you're from, but also why did you get started on the journey? What prompted this as you were thinking about this?
So I am with Target, and I had the data and strategy teams for BI and big data solutions. And one of the main area of focus of my responsibility is to deliver the enterprise data platform for Hadoop and to deliver the data ingestion layer for it. So what prompted us on this journey was we started exploring Hadoop in 2012 as a big data discovery platform. That was where we started the journey where we wanted the business to start exploring these new types of data. Target, being traditional retailer, has a lot more traditional data warehouse. So we wanted to give an exposure to our business to start looking at these new data sources. But bigger shift happened at Target late last year, where we saw such a huge expansion of our EDW and the cost related to it. So we wanted to overall optimize our EDW cost and look at the different ways where we can start looking at Hadoop as a data ingestion layer and start feeding the data as a processing engine for our EDW to augment it. We realized that 30% of our ETL and the ELT cost within the EDW has been spent in just data processing and structuring and parsing the data, which was a low value add to us. And that initiated this journey for us. And along with not only establishing Hadoop as an ingestion platform, we are looking to explore this as more of data science and the data analytics and bringing in new types of data sources which are originating from our web and the connected devices. And how do we enrich our guest experiences, whether they are coming through our stores or they are coming through our web or they are doing through our mobile. So we are really excited to be on this journey while we are still early on.
Okay. Thank you, Anu. Daljit, as our representative from the UK, right, as you started on this journey, what issues were you trying to address as you thought through this?
Yeah, so we're the largest utility company in the United Kingdom. We service 17 million households across the UK. We provide energy and also insurance products, which has made us into one of the biggest insurance companies as well in the UK. So what happened about 12 months ago for us was we started to realize that with the rollout of our smart metering program, we're getting half-hourly meter reads. So we're getting meters feeding us information every half an hour. The grid is supplying us with information every half an hour for up to eventually 17 million households. At the same time that meter read information comes in, we have to marry that up with information relating to who the customer is. And that takes up to 14 days after it gets processed through all our legacy stack. So about a year ago, we decided to look at a more radical solution in this space. We went back to the days of when data warehousing originally started and questioned why people had ODSs before they had appliances. And we found a good marriage between, really the sort of Hadoop infrastructure-based solution and what we wanted to achieve. And at that point, we recognized it was more about our people. So we gave our people up to 6 months to play with Hadoop, MapReduce, and NoSQL technology, including buying them things like Nanodes and Raspberry Pis, and they went off and built their own Hadoop clusters. At that point, we decided to invest in a scaled platform, which is where we are now in the process of finishing our first 100 nodes. I think in about 2 weeks' time, we go live with our first applications.
Okay. Thank you, Daljit. Chris, let's talk about, so for Rogers, as you thought of this, how did you think about your initial business case and as you think of funding and everything around it as you get started?
So at Rogers, Rogers is a Canadian telecom company, also a cable operator and a media company. The part of the business that I started the journey on a year ago with our team was really looking at how to take the publishing business and move it in more toward a people or an audience focus. So what we looked at was really, we knew we were going to have very large data sets, and I think as people in the audience think about, where are they going to start their Hadoop exercises, often it's the vendors that you're working with, the Adobes of the world, the Googles of the world, and getting access to your log files about your customers there. So we looked at, we realized that we're going to have about 120 million records a day to process, and it was immediately clear that we'd have to move into a Hadoop type of a framework, and then that's basically where the journey started. At the same time, there's another group in the organization that was looking at how do you rationalize some of the really large costs around call data records or CDRs, and so they were also looking to see what made sense in that, and the Hadoop solution became also very apparent. So we decided to partner together in our evaluations, and we moved at different speeds because obviously the telecom piece was much more critical, had a lot more collaboration amongst the groups. But ours group, because it was around advertising and one particular application, we could move quite quickly. So we decided that we'd work in a partnership, and that's kind of how the journey started. So we were able to get up to speed very quickly, with our partners that were helping us with that deployment, and then stood up our cluster in May, and we're open for business in September.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Ron Nakar, I think you started on this journey early, right? And we're a pioneer in terms of looking at Hadoop and what it could leverage for Coles. Maybe you give a view of what prompted you to start, and then some thoughts on initially what was the application, how you thought around using it.
Yeah, so take two. So at Coles, we were trying to solve a different problem. While analytics was important, I oversee all of customer experiences at Coles, web, mobile, social, kiosk, and in-store experiences. So the thing that we were trying to look at, and we started this about a year ago, knowing that data is going to grow exponentially, both structured and unstructured data, is to how do you take all of that data and in real time, evaluate that and predict what is going to be the best next action. So that is where kind of we started that journey. Now, we have a lot of work to do in that journey. But as we thought about this problem, we went in and said, okay, let's start first with collecting whatever data that we have. And most retailers, like most retailers, we have a lot of transactional data. Then we went in and started collecting all the path data in terms of the digital experiences, all the clickstream data. And then we started collecting additional data sources. And now we're in a place where we're starting to slowly look at algorithms that will be able to personalize the experience. But it took a long time to get there, and we're still in our infancy, and we're kind of continuing this journey.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right, John. So with everyone here, right, a lot of enterprise companies established, been there many years, right, legacy infrastructure, have installations. You started from a different basis, right? Newer company, you get to start from scratch. And what gave you?
That's right. And I think that gave us some unique opportunities. So at TrueCar, we help you get a good price on a car, and we try to make car buying more fun and a good experience, both for the person buying the car as well as the person selling the car. It's usually the second largest purchase that people make. It can be quite stressful. So TrueCar, our product really is data. One of the fascinating things about TrueCar is we don't actually sell cars, but we help you know what other folks paid for a car. And that means that we have to be very good at data. TrueCar only gets paid if the car is actually sold. And automotive is an incredibly data-rich environment. And we have a voracious appetite for data. Since data is our product, it's something that is a central focus for us. And we were really just sort of drowning in the size of our data sets, data movement, pressure around that was tremendous. And as a smaller company, we try to be very agile. So we were looking to optimize what we call product velocity, which is going from idea to a commercial product. And we realized that the new technology of Hadoop really kind of changes the dynamics of that in a fundamental way. So we look to really revolutionize core aspects of our business. We didn't go into it just hoping for better BI or faster SQL execution time. We really went into it with a philosophical approach. We looked at the economics of the new technology and realized that it fundamentally changes the game and what you can do. And so, we were able to sort of achieve a high degree of buy-in. And we are on a path now that, while still early, it's very exciting because there are things that we can do now that we never would have dreamed possible. And so for us, this has just really been a game changer. And it's something that, as a newly public company, we're trying to build a business that will really last and stand the test of time. So we're investing heavily in this approach, and we think it's going to be a great differentiator for our business.
Congratulations on a very successful IPO.
Thank you very much.
Very well. Daljit, so as we think about it, Hadoop is typically not an isolated system, right? You need to integrate with other components of your infrastructure, share data, ingest data, move. What are some of the other types of systems as you think of your data platform where Hadoop's integrating in with other technologies?
Yeah, so...
Sorry, can you hear me? Okay. The integration is a real challenge because for us anyway, our source core systems are SAP systems. So we have a CRM and billing platform for utilities, which is built in SAP. And, SAP's schema is a hugely complex beast. So we've had to innovate, and we've had to think of our own sort of solutions internally, how we manage that data, how we get that data out, and then integrate it northwards off the data lake that we're producing through our RESTful API strategy. So some of the things that I'm now seeing in Yarn will certainly help us with that journey. Mm-hmm. But the integration is at every level. So you need to think about how you get data into Hadoop, then you need to think about how it gets consumed, and in such a way that you don't end up making the mistake of having your OLTP systems out of sync with the decisioning and the real-time abilities that you now have in your data domain, which previously you didn't have. So it's a real challenge.
Okay. Ratnakar, too, because you mentioned, right, from customer experiences, it's web, it's kiosk, it's mobile, it's in-store, it's all the different experiences. A lot of different places you probably need to ingest data. How do you think of that same thing from where you need to integrate and be able to pull information into the platform?
So our journey has been interesting. Initially we started off saying, okay, what can we ingest? So start with transactional data. most retailers have transactional data. You have the clickstream data that is already kind of in the cloud, either through Adobe Omniture or IBM's tools. But take that, batch processing, and take that and ingest it. Then we looked at things like Wi-Fi access data. How do you ingest that? So most of it was done through batch processing in the past. Now, as we get to Storm and Kafka and other things, we're now really trying to collect this more real time into the data lake. And all of this, we're also opening up event APIs so that the channels can actually talk to the big data infrastructure directly. So that will now enable us to get real-time data into the data lake and then analyze that and then do predictive algorithms on top of that.
Okay. So everything with Hadoop 2 and Yarn, giving you the ability to start to have multiple ingest engines, to start to stream data, and that's sounds like it's opening up new possibilities for Colt.
I'll tell you, Hadoop Yarn is 2.0 Yarn is fantastic. I mean, this is what we've been waiting for. I mean, it's been a little bit problematic until then, but the different workloads and everything that we can do there is amazing.
Okay. Thank you. Anu, same question as you think about that.
And I think my answer is very similar to Ratnakar, because being a retailer, for us, we still have those traditional data sources, those transactional data sources, and size of target, we have all RDBMS systems you can think in the world. So our mainframe to Oracle, to SQL Server, to Teradata, we have data coming from all of those systems. So integration is really important for us, for our Hadoop technology, so that we can ingest the data. And we are moving more and more away from batch and moving more towards the near real-time integration. So having that support of where we can ingest the data across all that patterns of integration is important for us at Target. And again, going back to Ratnakar, the clickstream, log data, all of that data is coming at from our different channels, is important for us to ingest in near real time. So Storm and Kafka is an important piece for us. We strongly believe in a service-oriented architecture, so services first. So how do we leverage our APIs for both ingestion and for consumption of the data? That's important. Other than the data ingestion, I would say in this space, in this ecosystem of data, it's integration with the rest of the technologies from a usage and the consumption side of it, so that it's not you're democratizing the data. From an access perspective, it's also important, as ingestion is important. So integration with NoSQL databases. We are heavily using those NoSQL databases to make sure that we are providing that event-driven architecture for our consumers. That's an important piece. And I cannot ignore the consumer side from the dashboarding and the reporting, while they don't play so much in this space, but I do see a lot of business users who would like to explore and prototype and look at those new data sources. So the integration from technologies which can do that kind of visualization and interactive SQL, so TES, Yarn, absolutely those two are really promising for us, and we are very excited at the time when we entered the space and having access, the possibilities which Yarn is enabling from a data access is really important for us.
Okay. Well, interesting, because a lot of people talking about consumer experience, how do you improve the experience, how do you interact with your customers in different ways. David, let's talk to you, because very long-standing bank, right? More on the commercial side, clearing and other businesses, right? Not as much the consumer side. How do you think of that?
Exactly. We're a very different business model. We have a relatively small number of users. We have 60 or 70 portals out there that are used by a few thousand investment professionals and portfolio managers. So we really actually don't collect much clickstream data. There's just not that much volume to do. And the people that are using our portals we pretty much understand what they're trying to do. What we're doing instead is, so definitely we're ingesting and managing transaction data, all sorts of trades and processes that we handle on behalf of our clients. But the other interesting thing that we're trying to do is we're actually starting to collect a lot of machine data and a lot of event data that describes what happens to those trades as we process them. Because in the past, if you went to a firm like ours, and major banks around the world will make large deposits with us in the morning, and I literally sat in the control room a couple of weeks ago and watched as by 10:30 in in the morning, we had $3.5 trillion of money that wasn't ours coming in the door, being deposited, that our clients would then trade against. And that's a lot of capital coming into the bank. And traditionally what happens is we receive their money, we get their trade instructions, and we execute trades, we settle trades, we clear trades, we handle all of the after-trade processing. And some number of days later, depending on the type of financial instrument, they eventually get a confirmation back saying this trade was executed and the paper is being held in such and such a repository. And it really doesn't give a lot of visibility into what's happening in the inner workings of the financial system. So it's interesting because we had previously tried to really start tracking and reporting for some clients at a very granular level what is happening almost minute by minute. But the challenge was there's just such a tremendous volume of it that it just really wasn't economical to do this prior to having Hadoop. And so now we've started, and it's early days, but we've started to collect that data, just tremendous, literally billions of events per day about what's happening in each step of these trades. And we're collecting that, and we're providing our clients with visibility, near real-time visibility into what's happening with the business that we are handling for them. And ultimately, we think that we can even give them predictive analytics to help them understand when there's things happening in the market that line up with their trading patterns, where we will go and say, hey, you need to pre-fund this account at a greater level today because we think you're going to execute more trades on this product than you usually do. So it's sort of a different application for us.
It's different, but in many ways similar, moving from reactive to predictive analytics.
Absolutely.
And then looking at, effectively, you are trying to improve your client experience.
Yes.
In terms of what you're doing. But I'm going to stay on you for one more question here, because what's interesting, because coming from the banking sector, $3.5 trillion of money coming through, some would say, is Hadoop a secure platform? How do you think of security, right, from that perspective as you look at that?
So it's funny because I get that exact question about 20 times a week. David, is Hadoop a secure platform? And we are in an industry that's heavily regulated and, frankly, that's also heavily paranoid about security. So what we are doing right now is we're really building a secure multi-tenant platform. We're integrating with Kerberos and Active Directory and really trying to develop a rock-solid secure platform. We don't have that fully built out yet, so we're taking more of a locked room approach right now, where we have a very limited number of people who have access to some of this data that describes what's happening. Because clearly, if someone could see what JP Morgan is doing today, they could start front-running their trades, and really, there could be bad actors out there. So security is one of the big issues for us. What we're discovering as Hadoop is maturing is that there is so much work going on, both within the Apache Foundation and vendors out in the space, that are helping us with securing the data, with masking the data, with all sorts of the encryption and decryption that we need to do on this information. So we don't have that solved yet, but we're actually pretty confident that we can secure this information, and we can manage the retention and disposal of this information in a way that meets our standards and our legal requirements.
Right. So it sounds like even in a heavily regulated industry, you're comfortable on the path you're on in terms of security and what you can do with that much money, and, as you said, the competitive nature, right, of all the different players as you go through that. Okay? Chris, let's talk about from a telecommunications perspective. As you think of the different systems you're trying to interface with, and you're probably both a little bit of both enterprise and consumer experience, right, as you look at this.
Yeah, so in terms of the systems that we're working with, we started off in the advertising part of our business, the media part of the business. And so a lot of that has been getting vendors like Adobe and Google to work with each other in terms of passing information between those systems in real time. We've been receiving all of the log data like the retailers have, just to understand what activities are happening amongst the customers and what that experience is for them. The Hadoop platform has really allowed us to bring in fairly significant quantities of data and then take decisions on that. So the vendors, whether it's Adobe or Google, they have some reporting that they give to their customers, but it's really nice to be able to have your copy of the data that you can run your own predictive analytics on top of. And it's really important when you're making decisions to decide if you're going to place an advertisement, into the places, the locations, to understand what are the audiences or the people that you're speaking to, and then the interactions of those. So I think it's pretty easy to look at, what are the best places or what are the best audiences, but looking at what is the decision tree or the interactions between those two is now something that you can do with Hadoop and using, analytic software from the likes of SAS to take those decision flows and map that on. We're mostly operating in a batch process at this point, but we're very excited with the Storm and what that will offer us to be able to go into the real time. Because when you look at the other part of the business in terms of the consumer experience and telecom, now you have a capability that you've developed in audiences and understanding what's important to them, and be able to map that into a customer experience. For someone who's communicating with the website, trying to understand what is another package that they could add to their product set, et cetera. And now you have a very rich capability to service that customer because of the capabilities that you've built up and the understandings of your customer sets. And then I think, as Anu mentioned, the capability to visualize this and allow people in the company to tell the stories through Tableau and through some of the other integrations. I think one of the biggest pieces that we're all hearing at this conference is that the whole ability to use Hive and Tez and have that easily plug into Excel or to SAS or to Tableau is going to greatly accelerate. We have a few people in our team, and when you kick off a Hive query, you go and get some coffee and wait. In the older versions, when you didn't have that acceleration, now just sort of the instantaneous nature of being able to access that data is super exciting.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. So John, for you, your platform is all about excellent customer experience, right? That's what your whole business is built on. So as you think of real time and some aspects, how does that play into as you look at what you're doing at TrueCar?
Sure. So TrueCar, we supply our data through websites, but also now through mobile apps. And so for us, it's really a data integration problem as opposed to a systems integration problem. We're a younger business. But these are fascinating because car buying is a transaction that happens in the real world. It's an inherently unstructured data set. The world of automotive, even the data that sort of should be structured, there are data quality issues that make it feel very unstructured. And a great example are the names that manufacturers give to the colors of vehicles. So something can be called midnight red. It's neither midnight nor red. So the ability to grapple with these things, even in a supposedly structured data set at scale, and then to produce results that are available in a very timely way. So we want to be supplying the right piece of data at the right moment to all players in a car buying transaction all the way through to a successful conclusion. That means that we have to be very agile about how we do that, and we have to be very, very good at taking in very large data sets with very poor quality, mostly unstructured. Vehicle imagery, for instance, is a big issue for us. We process about 1 million new vehicle images a day. At any given moment in our data set, we've got about 250 million vehicle images. That's something that SQL doesn't directly even speak to. So for us, it wasn't necessarily about make SQL go faster. We got that, and that was great. But even more exciting was the ability to do things like deep learning and processing of imagery. Discover, is that vehicle really midnight red? What does that mean? And how does that improve data quality? So that we can have confidence when we serve this data up through our products. And I think the other aspect for us was really revolutionizing the development process. A lot of time was going into SQL-specific wizardry. So for us, a lot of agility comes from the ability to parse unstructured data natively and not have to go through the overhead of unstructured to structured, back to basically unstructured again. Streamlining that pipeline from a business perspective was really important for us.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. So a lot of different types of data, a lot of different classes of data in terms of what you do there.
That's right.
Okay. How do you, I'll stay with you, John, for a second. How do you think of governance, right, of data governance in the platform as you start to look at that?
So I have a background in information security and data governance. TrueCar powers a tremendous number, hundreds of websites that are white labeled for other organizations. A lot of those are banks and insurance companies who like to have car buying sites because it helps them sell their vehicle financing and insurance products. So they have a lot of restrictions on us. And even though we're a small business and we're agile, we still have to meet traditional requirements for security and data governance. Also, it turns out to be crucial to the customer experience that you're able to do things like master data and understand a customer record. And in a large data environment with lots of unstructured data sources, it's something that we have to be good at. So we're putting a lot of effort into this. And this is an area where we're rapidly evolving. And I think that when it comes to data governance, both being able to do the right things with data supplied to us by partners, that's absolutely critical to our business. And being able to understand conclusively what a sort of definitive and accurate piece of data is, even in an area where there could be conflicting sources. Hadoop gives us new capabilities in that regard. Because we have a rich programming language under the hood, we can write programs that make more complicated decisions and consider more factors when they decide how to handle and make a decision around something important like data governance. And I think a crucial aspect of that is having all your data in one place. To us, data movement has tactical issues. Obviously, it's slow. It's got some problems, but it's also a symptom that you don't have your data in one place. And when you have more data available to these programs that make decisions about things like data governance, it's actually, you get a richer decision from the programs. You can consider more sources of data. And to us, that's just sort of a game-changing aspect of the underlying technology. And it's something that is really kind of opening new doors for us around topics like data governance.
Great, okay. So a lot of the things added into 2.1 around governance and security in all areas you're taking advantage of in terms of what you can do there.
Absolutely. 2.1 is a huge release for us, and it's going to make life a lot easier around those issues.
Good. Okay, good. Ratnakar, as you think of governance for Kohl's, right, as you look at that and say, how do you think of that in terms of what you're doing at Kohl's and as you're building out the platform?
Yeah, to John's point, I think a couple of things, right? So having data in a central location in itself is a great opportunity for us to control, manage, and secure it. There are three elements that I think about. First is from a data governance, are we getting the right data? Is it the quality data? And are there elements of that data that already need to be secure when they come into the Hadoop infrastructure or the big data infrastructure, like credit card? Is it encrypted? Things like that. So that's one element of it. And the second piece of this is who has access to that data? And that's where we kind of control that with having users who are specifically having access to certain sets of data. We're actually thrilled with your acquisition of XA Security because then role-based access can be put in, which I think will help tremendously in that process. And then the third element of this is where are we distributing that data and who are we distributing that data to? And do you need all the details of that data or do you need just the summary aspects of it? And so that's how we kind of look at all these components and we manage that with our core team there and continue to look at how to evolve that. And 2.1 definitely will help a lot in those areas.
Good. Okay, thank you. So Anu, so let's take a little bit of a change here. So as you think, a couple people have talked about, right, it's about having the data in one place and trying to start to centralize, create a data lake and put together. That really effectively means as all the data goes into one place, you're starting to cross organizational boundaries, and there's probably some cultural changes and some organizational things that people have to think through as they're going through that. How do you think of that at Target?
So I think back in the green room, I and Ratnakar were talking a lot, and Chris and I talked throughout this conference in the last few days. I think this whole skills and the talent and the cultural shift is really important in this space. So companies like Target and bigger companies, like we are used to those traditional way of thinking of the traditional step-by-step process, but these kind of an ecosystem is bringing the forefront of us the new kind of possibilities, the new kind of opportunities. So how do we start thinking differently and how do we start being more agile? Having that kind of a cultural shift where you're not coming from the focus of just thinking of this problem I need to solve. How do I expand my horizon to start thinking and start leveraging these disruptive technologies in a different way? So I definitely see a huge shift is needed from a culture side of it. At the same time, as I look at this technology, it's maturing at such a rapid pace. And I would give a lot of credit to the community backing of it. So how is the community contributing to the technology? And as this technology is moving at such a fast, rapid pace, internally, how do you make sure that you're incubating those projects, hardening it, and then scaling it out? So how do you start small? But start it small with the right talent and the right mind shift to think about it and look at it in a different way rather than just coming from how you did before, and then scale it out in the organization. So at Target, I think we are positioned with the right strategy and the right buy-in from our senior executives, where we are looking to have a small, agile team. So I have a team which is federated from across the organization, which has a platform operations person, an architecture, design, engineering, and looking across the skills and the talent from the organization, but a core small team which can start and lay down the foundation which can be scaled out in future.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Anu. Daljit, as you think of that, because you're a very established company, right? I'm sure you have some processes in place. How do you think of that from that type of shift?
From a organization perspective, what our sort of data lake Hadoop project is allowing us to do for the first time is to get the organization right. Because we're a 200-year-old company. We have many silos, many divisions, and everybody's gone off and done their own sort of piece. So centralization of the data assets allows and enables us to put governance in place. It also allows us to break that cycle of software development, which was, give me this report, oh no, you got it wrong, add another column, and each time this is happening, there's like 6 weeks passing between each iteration, and the end users getting really frustrated with the IT people. So what this is allowing us to do is to move towards a self-care sort of paradigm. Organizationally, some of the skill sets that we have within the IT function, we now recognize actually belong within the business functions. Because if we want our business units to be sort of empowered to do work by themselves, they're going to need some of those traditional skills like data modelers, etc. And frame all that into sort of what it means. It's allowing us to get our roles right. So from an IT perspective, the roles are now being defined along the lines of understanding and programming paradigm, but infrastructure, management of the infrastructure, performance and scalability, but not, complex formula, tell me what the value of this is, and put that into a business requirements, and somebody in IT is trying to figure out what the end user wants. That we're pushing back towards the business function. So organizationally, this is going to be quite a big change for us. But, I think it is the right one.
Okay. Okay. Chris, as you think of this, and as you look at, because you work with very, as you think of getting access to the data and providing access for analytics, right? I know you've got a lot of ways you've done it in the past and also exploring new ways. How do you think of the existing technologies that you use to go get access to the data and provide visualization, other things to your users, and newer technologies that you may be considering?
So the conversation of that Daljit and Anu have been having around the organizational impact, I think if people in the audience take home one really important piece, it's there's a lot around the mindset and the organization culture to really enable this to work. We were talking yesterday, Daljit and I, and our organizations are going through a reorganization with Boston Consulting Group, and so we're seeing, along business lines or certain structures in terms of how the organization is being done. But for big data, one of the and the analytics capabilities that this now enables, which is fairly new, the key piece is really about leadership and teamwork amongst the different groups. Because in order to be successful, I think you can start with a small team, and that makes it very rapid innovation, but then you quickly find that you're having conversations with the IT team to make sure that the data is centralized so that you have one resource. But what's happened now is you have two vessels of data access. One is the enterprise data warehouse, which has been in place for, in some companies, decades. And then you have this additional vessel, which is the Hadoop infrastructure. and all of the analytics and predictive analytics that are being put on top of that. And these need to really make sure that the models are consistent and that they work together, and that you can have conversations that work well amongst the organization. So I think the term that we use, and it's been fascinating for me to listen to the other panelists talk about how they don't have a desire to say, oh, this is a great opportunity to build a big team inside of the organization, but there's this idea of democratization and engaging with the other business units to make sure that they are able to have the analytical or the data science capabilities, and that you build a platform that's very serviceable, with the company's data that can then rapidly, meet the needs of these, the business needs and the customer experience that you're trying to establish as a corporate entity.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. David, so as you think of, go back on your journey, if you could think back and maybe share with the audience, if you could impart a piece of wisdom to them of what you learned from your journey and say, if I were starting over, here's something I would try to do differently or try to consider that kind of given the wisdom of your experience going through this.
How much time do I have for that question? I'll tell you one thing I think we did right, and I'll tell you some things I would do differently doing it again, because we're a pretty storied organization as well, and that has some challenges. In fact, I suspect, but I can't prove it, that some of our IT staff was actually contemporaries with Alexander Hamilton when the bank started. So we're very, very buttoned down and driven by process and procedure in the IT organization. But what's interesting is our business leadership is much more open to change, and in fact, we have a vice chairman who regularly calls me and tells me what we should be doing with advanced analytics. He's out there meeting with people and dreaming up these ambitious schemes for how he wants to leverage our data, and it's refreshing. But I feel like sometimes the chief negotiating officer with the IT organization trying to drag us out of our very structured way of delivering systems, which correctly is very focused on absolute minimization of risk, minimizing operational downtime, etc. But that comes at the cost of sometimes stifling innovation. So the one thing that I think we did a decent job of was we set ourselves a goal before we ever worried about a production application in Hadoop. We said, let's give ourselves 6 to 8 months to go around the organization, document and execute a series of use cases. So we have now finished just about 54 of those use cases. We have about another 100 in the pipeline. We'll continue to do that even while we build out production applications. And a lot of it was really just to help both the business and the IT community understand what the potential was, what the process was going to be like. Because the first time, I'll never forget the first time I sat down with a team about to build a data warehouse, and I said, look, I've got this amazing ability now to transform the way you build a warehouse with this concept of schema at read. I can give you access to this data in days instead of months. And you may still have to migrate to your production relational appliance this year to provide the high volume reports, but I can give you and your users access very, very quickly. And they said, that would be amazing. And then they promptly literally sent me about an 80-page questionnaire saying, would you please document every last step you're going to go through, every piece of technology required, and every step. And I said, we're learning this as we go. This is not something we can do. So I think, we had the right idea by doing this use case approach to sort of, sow that knowledge throughout the organization. I think the biggest mistake we made, frankly, was we still let ourselves get too tied up in thinking about this as a production application. So, for example, we spend a lot of time wrestling with security. And, as we talked about earlier, security is really critical. But at the same time, having a full secured multi-tenant environment probably cost us 6 months in terms of our ability to really start ingesting and using large quantities of data. We are wasting nodes in our cluster because we built a very traditional 4-tier development, test, QA, and production model. And it was one of those things where the technical infrastructure group said, well, this is the way it is. And so we now have many, many nodes that really are never going to be utilized because we are not going to put full-scale systems in a dev environment and migrate them up through environments. So I think the lesson I'm learning in all of this is I spend a lot of time thinking about how this can change our life cycle and the way that we deliver solutions and the kinds of solutions we can deliver. But I think at the same time, I need to spend more time, and you know, I would counsel anyone starting this journey a lot of time just on the nuts and bolts of how are you going to manage this environment. What's the role of the DBA going to be? We have a large team of DBAs who, you know, I've been fighting them off with crossbows and sticks, trying to say, look, I don't need the traditional, you know, DBA model for this. So, you know, some of those very operational things that are easy, for me at least, to overlook because you're so excited by the potential of what you can do, have really come back and made life more difficult. And I'm slowly learning that you just have to, you know, almost reinvent the way that you build applications from the ground up, right down at the infrastructure level and up.
Okay. So in some ways, it sounds like it's just get started. You'll learn along the way.
Yes.
Right? You've got 154 different use cases now that you see as potential uses for the platform in terms of what you can do, starting to march across those applications. Yeah. So interesting. Okay. Chris, similar question. As you think, what would be the lessons learned as you went through this, or something that may have been surprising as you've gone through this journey?
Yeah, I think in terms of lessons learned, when we were talking earlier in the week amongst this panelist group, starting with a small team makes a big difference in the sense of being able to rapidly innovate and understand and put together and stand up an initial prototype. I think one of the things that we did well was while we were doing that, spent a lot of time talking with the other groups because to David's point, if you do not have those conversations early on, you are going to have a world of pain later on trying to describe to people what it is that you have unwrought for the organization. And so, I mean, in terms of lessons learned, spend the time to have those conversations to let people understand what it is that the new capabilities are going to bring, and then make sure you know that you keep it to a definable task. Focus is very important because yes, you can easily come up with 154 use cases as you go along, but what you want to do is make sure that you solve several really, really well. And then the other part is don't be afraid to reach out to your vendors. We found that the ones that we had picked early on, Hortonworks, SAS, some of the others, Adobe and Google, have made a huge difference on us being able to be able to deliver the types of value to the business that we have. You know, without that strong partnership, it would have been really hard in the early days.
Okay, thank you. Daljit, how do you think of, as you go out and say, you need to describe Hadoop to the business and say, here's why you want this, and here's why this is important to you?
Yeah, I mean, and really, I was thinking the answer through whilst you were talking. The communication and the way you are going to describe the benefits of Hadoop to your teams is critical, because the business case, if you look at all the standard things in a program about the justification, business case, cost reduction, etc., that's one thing. But you need to recognize, by you saying you're bringing in something new, there will be people in your organization that will think of that as what they did was wrong. And you know, there will be people that perceive it as a threat. And I think the great thing is what Hadoop allows you to do is actually allow everybody to come on the journey with you. But by selling them this self-care, you will be the master of your own destiny. You can break the dependency from your IT organization. Once we get this built, this is the answer to everything you ever wanted. That's fantastic. But to have that right at the beginning will cost you, because it will slow you down. So the approach we've done is the primary use case is to actually improve our IT. Because let's face it, everybody hates them, and they're the people that everybody blames for not getting any data. So focusing there and showing the improvement there has allowed us to now bring our business units along that journey.
Okay. Ratnakar, as you think through this and as you provide access to the data for your users, right, your constituents, your consumers, your customers, et cetera, how do you think of that, of the different ways you're going to provide access to that and let them get visibility into what you now have in this platform?
Yeah, so there are a couple of ways, right? Internally, with our internal customers, whether it's marketing, whether it is the business, the self-service capability is something that we're very focused on. How do we focus more on the actual predictive algorithms, the data analytics, and provide the tool sets for the business to do what they do really well? So the self-service is a key piece of this. Then you say, well, that can be done in one of two ways, right? So they still use the traditional analytics, like an EDW or something like that. So how do you get the data there so that they can run their reporting that they're so used to on a daily basis, but with more real-time data, much more frequent data, is one element of it. And the other is, how do you build tool sets on top of the big data infrastructure so that they can do ad hoc queries and other things? So we're looking at data mirror and other things. Then on the front end, in terms of the customer experience itself, how do you expose both the algorithms and the output of that, as well as some of the data that's required to create an experience? And that's where the SOA architecture and other things come into play, with opening up the right set of APIs for the channels to actually interact. So that's how we're thinking about the problem, and still a lot of work to do there, but that's how we're looking at it.
Okay. And Anu, right, because you mentioned some things as you look at, you're doing interactive query now, right? You're doing other ways, so you're providing different access patterns probably to users that in some ways maybe just new system, different pattern, may be completely different in terms of what they're thinking of.
Yeah, so very similar to the rest of the panelists, we are looking to stand up this platform more as a scalable platform, and our goal is to make sure that we are providing the right data at the right platform at the right cost. So keeping that goal in mind and having that self-service capability, it's very important for us to make sure that we are giving that interactive query access, which now with TES, we are able to provide that capability to the business to start exploring these new kinds of data sets. So whether it's a clickstream data or whether it's your social data, or it's machine-generated data out of our different devices, we are giving the business the capability with the tools they already know, and then slowly introduce the new tools. Because we cannot expose them completely to the new tools and let go of their old tools in their toolbox. So making sure we give them the access to the current tools and giving them kind of that prototyping capability where they can quickly vet out those use cases and see which has a value and which doesn't have a value. So giving that kind of interactive query analysis is very important. And then as we are maturing and as the business can build those applications or analytical applications or use cases, then how do we expose them as more as an APIs where they go and get embedded into our other applications which are more customer focused or which are more internal focused. So those are the ways in which we are looking to the access for the business. And third thing which we are doing is from a data management side of it, making sure that business not only has the access, but they understand the data. It's really important from a metadata management side of it. So looking at Falcon. So as you look from Yarn, which gives you this multi-tenant capability, which brings the capability to this platform to be a multi-purpose platform and support all sorts of workloads, from a batch to the interactive to the near real time. Then we are looking at Falcon to provide that kind of exposure or that kind of a visibility to the business around what kind of a data sets are living in what kind of a data ecosystem, because you have multiple data ecosystem, multiple data platforms within your ecosystem. We have big data solutions, we have conventional EDW, so that business understands which data is residing in which platform is really important for them to be successful, so that they understand the whole data lineage and the data governance and the data definitions.
Okay. Thanks, Anu. So John, as you think of it, you're a data business, right? So you're in the images and lots, you're collecting a lot of data. I have to believe your cluster is growing. How do you think of operating at scale as you start to think, as you're starting to grow this business and your infrastructure, your platform?
So at TrueCar, we started with a very strong philosophical point of view, and that was really based around the scaling possibilities of Hadoop. We looked at Hadoop as sort of a meta operating system for distributed computing, but it brings a new set of capabilities to the table. And low cost and extreme scalability are two of the central advantages. So that really sort of helped shape our thinking around this. So for instance, the fact that it's so cheap to store data, You know, the economics of our cluster were just incredible. We paid 23 cents a gigabyte, which is really only just looking at the storage side of it. We got compute along with that as well. When we look at what that really means, combined with extreme scalability, it means that you can now essentially save data forever. And when you take the timeline to infinity, you're going to save your data forever. You now have many, many opportunities to come back and discover ways to monetize data. And that really is just sort of a game changer, especially around things like machine learning. By saving all of your data forever, you've got great models you can use to train machine learning in the future. You also unlock the potential of old data sets. You may add in a new data set that, when combined with historical data, yields startling new conclusions. So for us, the scalability was really key. And as we look at building out our cluster, we see really revolutionary new capabilities around things like marketplace simulation. You know, there's a lot of interest in doing real-time simulation of a very complex automotive marketplace, many different facets and variables at play there. So as we look at achieving very large scale over time, we think that we'll do things like you know, simulate the marketplace, perhaps initially as a batch job the night before, and then push quick lookup tables into our front end. But eventually that's going to move into some new technology areas. And again, the scalability of Hadoop has changed our thinking and made these new things possible.
Right. Okay. So interesting, across all the panelists as we had this conversation, a couple things that I took away that were pretty consistent. Right. One is what you were just saying, John, which is almost it's easier to just store all the data because you can figure out what to do with it later as opposed to trying to segment in which data should I save. Right. Second is the idea of moving from reactive to predictive analytics and being able to start to predict and influence behavior in different ways through different business models of what can you do to help use Hadoop to help influence behavior. Heard a lot about what can you do to start to integrate batch, interactive, and real-time in a single platform and how things like Yarn really help you do that. And as everyone's thinking about how does it affect their business models and what can you do with that to improve either consumer experience, how you go provide feedback to clients, etc., but different ways you can go do that. And then lastly, a lot of talk about some of the changes you think about culture in the company, but also about security and governance and operations at scale and how the platform helps you do that and how you can run and leverage Hadoop in a secure way in very traditional businesses and new businesses. So with that, I want to thank all our panelists for their time, for taking the time to really spend this with everyone. Appreciate this greatly. But it's just great to hear the different skills and experiences as people work through this, that as you look at Hadoop and you look especially at 2.1 and what's out in the community now, what's possible and what's available. So with that, I think we're coming to the close of our session here. First, I certainly want to thank all of our panelists for working through this on this as distinguished companies in terms of what you're all doing there. So thank you very much. Very much I want to thank all of the sponsors for the show. So, as the co-host, whether Hortonworks and Yahoo, all of our diamond sponsors, some of which you heard through the different keynotes or saw over in the community showcase, different platinum sponsors that are here, what we have with the gold sponsors, the silver sponsors, and ultimately the exhibitors. So I want to thank all of the sponsors and appreciate all of their time and everything they've done to help make this show a possibility. By the way, we will be back here next year, similar show, same location, so please feel free to sign up for that. We'll do that again next year. And just lastly, with all of you here, what I want to do is I want to thank all of you, what I would consider the community, in terms of what you're doing to help advance Apache Hadoop, for working with all of us along on this journey, and for contributing back. So I appreciate that. We all appreciate that. Thank you very, very much. Please enjoy the rest of the conference, and thank you, everyone.